welcome to the NdB Sunday Show. With me, Steyn and Willem Els, a consultant at the Transnational Threats and Organised Crime and the Justice and Violence Prevention Program at the Institute for Security Studies. Welcome, Willem.
Hi, Chris. Thank you.
You're welcome. Terrorism and South Africa. Why is South Africa considered to be attractive to terror networks?
Yeah, I think, it's been a discussion that's been ongoing for a long time. It came to the fore, especially when we had the FATF assessment of South Africa and also the citing of some people within South Africa by the American Treasury as being funders and working to facilitate terrorism. So that actually opened up the door. But also just some background, currently we have the so-called Sharia court case in Johannesburg that's ongoing. We've got the Klip River case that is ongoing on terrorism. We've got the so-called Del Vecchio case that's been on the books for now for several years already down in KZN. So there's been some cases. We also had the botched case where Huma was charged in KZN. So it's been with us. We haven't seen attacks to that matter, but we've seen that they have been here, and it seems that South Africa actually opened ourselves to create an environment that is conducive for these people to thrive. But we see that recently Professor Hussein Solomon, actually in one of his lectures, he really managed to capture the essence of what we are experiencing at the moment. And he mentioned that the absence of attacks does not equal the absence of the threat, and we should not be misguided.
Are you saying that South Africa is failing?
I think so. The very fact that we've been grey listed, we struggled for a long time to get removed from the grey list, and because of all the deficiencies that were identified in our structures. So and there are some reasons for that why South Africa is failing. For instance, we've got a very weak law enforcement that is supposed to actually close the gaps on these financial crimes and these people to actually thrive in the environment that has been created in South Africa. So the porous borders that we have, with the weak immigration control, and also, contributing to that, the weak enforcement, but also, the infrastructure that we have in South Africa that is very conducive for these groups to operate, especially under the radar. Our banking system, our transport system, our communication system, etc., etc. Those actually pave the way for these groups to exploit South Africa for logistics, but also for financing.
So do you think that South Africa should be worried about an attack?
I think, as Professor Hussein mentioned, that the absence of an attack doesn't mean that we don't have a problem. So I think the threat is rather more covert. The threat is rather more than kinetic. So we see that what's happening now, because of what we mentioned about the conducive conditions that have been created here in South Africa, we see that these groupings, they focus at the moment on fundraising and the financial flows of them, movement of money, the generation of fundings. They also use South Africa for recruitment and for radicalization support, not necessarily within South Africa, but in the region and beyond. And then also, once again, your safe haven for logistical coordination because of the weak enforcement and of these legislations, etc. But also we see then, because of the criminal economy that we have, where organized crimes syndicates are thriving, they also thrive on the networking, the illegal networking of your document fraud and your facilitation networks within the organized crime syndicates.
What are the key weaknesses that are being exploited, Willem?
I think, with these terrorist networks, they really are opportunistic. They do their homework, and they will move in where these conditions are conducive for them to thrive, but also where the chances of being detected is minimized. So we see that what they look at your structural governance weaknesses within South Africa. In the first place, we mentioned your financial system vulnerabilities. We've got gaps still in our anti-money laundering and our terror funding controls. With the FATF, we updated our legislation, and there's some more money that has been allocated to the FIC, for instance, and so on. But we are not where we are supposed to be when it comes to those enforcement of these regulations. And secondly, I think what came out in the past 6 to 8 months, corruption that is endemic within your state facilities, and not only within your law enforcement, but beyond, but also up into a political sphere, that actually facilitates the groups to really thrive, because that facilitates not only for the terrorist groups but also for your organized crime groups a weak enforcement that facilitate and create these opportunities for the networks to actually thrive. And then thirdly, something that is also mentioned a lot, and we say a lot about our porous borders, not only about the porous borders in terms of illegal immigrants coming in, but also the illicit goods and the money flows that is coming in and out. That is a big challenge. We have to look at your easy movement of people, goods, and your illicit finances that is coming from there. And then, very important, what we also mentioned quite a few times in the past, our intelligence fraternity is really in limbos. And, it's fragmented, and it is really not functioning the way it is supposed to function. And these people, they really thrive, and they exploit that in order to come up with their strategies.
Does South Africa's foreign policy play a role?
Yeah, I think our foreign policy, of course, it will play a role, because at the end of the day, it sends out a message. And Prof. Solomon actually suggests that your foreign policy can have an unintended consequences, even though it might not be intended by government and by the policy makers. As it is at the moment, it opens the door. So we see that South Africa global political alignment and the diplomatic stances, it might send the wrong message to some of these groups, and also it increase the visibility of these groups on our horizon coming in here, and then also it creates perceptions of political sympathy and tolerance, prompting those groups to actually come to South Africa and to operate here.
What needs to change urgently, Willem?
Yeah, there's a lot of things that we can do, and I think we have to look at the multi-layered approach there. There's something that can be done in the immediate now. Then there are your short-term, medium-term, and long-term responses. And what's very important, it must not only be multi-layered. It should actually be multi-dimensional, and also multi-stakeholders that you have to bring in order to deal with it. So if you look at your immediate priorities, first of all, we spoke about our financial systems. We spoke about our intelligence and our money laundering enforcement. Since we've been removed from the grey list, South Africa is on a maintenance plan where we still have to demonstrate and we still have to improve. And I think it's an ideal opportunity for South Africa to build on what has been put in place with the FATF assessment, and then we have to actually start to enforce. South Africa is very good when it comes to legislation, when it comes to policies, and drafting of all of that and putting it in place. We demonstrated that, because those were one of the first boxes that we ticked with the FATF assessment. Our challenge actually come with the enforcement of it and the implementation of those legislations and all those policies. So that is where we have to start. Then, of course, it's easier said than done, but our border security need to be strengthened, because that is our first line of defense when it comes there to this. And your challenge there is, we've got very long, very long maritime borders. We've got land borders that stretches over several thousand of kilometers, but also we have corruption. Now, it doesn't matter if you have 200 or 500 enforcement agents at one small little border post. If corruption crept in and it compromised that area, that border post is porous, and these things will come through. So we will have to look at how we're going to strengthen that, and how we're going to curb corruption when it comes to that. And then also, South Africa has got a history of interagency intelligence that is not what it is supposed to be. I know we've got NICOC, and where they are really trying to bring things together. But the moment you get to intelligence, the one with the most intelligence is the king. And so what's happening is that these agencies are not at liberty to always share everything. And that can create some gaps. So we have to find a way to strengthen that mechanisms, and that we can bring in our intelligence and coordinate it much better, because then you can start to act proactively. Then we also need some strategic shifts. Your threat of terrorism in the past was fairly standalone. But we saw in recent times that the interaction and the nexus between your terror organizations and your organized crime syndicates, that ecosystem has now merged. They are feeding off each other and they are using each other. So it's not a standalone issue anymore. So while we have the SADC or transnational organized crime strategy that is being implemented at the moment, we also are busy drafting our South African national transnational organized crime strategy. We have to bring in the counterterrorism part, and we have to see that we're not overlooking while they are feeding from each other and how they are benefiting from each other. Because if you just focus on the one, your chances are good that you might miss out on the rest. And then also, it's about investment. We see that that is one of the big things now with the budget, and how much money must go to the military, how much to the police, etc., etc. But we see that our intelligence-led policing is actually what we need to do. There are two things. You need your intelligence-led policing, and then you need your evidence-based policing. And they are feeding off each other, because the only way that you can work proactively is if you got those in place. So that is on a medium and a long-term strategy, but also South Africa is not an island. We are in a region, there's 16 countries within SADC, and if we do not build on that regional capacity and getting all the partners involved, we are going to fight this one alone, and then we're not going to win it. So I think the critical message that we have here is that, South Africa, we are not a target at the moment. But we are part of the global terrorism network environment. And if South Africa does not close those gaps that we identified and that are there, it risks remaining a safe operating space for your global terror networks, even though we don't have attacks at the moment.
Can this government realistically fix it, Willem?
Chris, I think yes. But as with everything else, it starts with political will. We saw so many things in the past that went wrong, and that is where the political influence was there. The political interference was there. It's coming out in the commissions now. So we will have to, in first place, we have to demonstrate the political will in order to do that. Then we will have to actually minimize the political interference in the operation of your organizations that have to fight this. And then we have to come up with a strategy of consequence management. If we don't have consequences for what people are doing, and now it's not only for this, it is from the smallest crime up to the most heinous crimes. If we don't have a very good consequent management system, people are going to get away with murder, and terrorists are going to think that they can also get away with murder. So yes, we can fix it. It's not going to happen overnight, but we need a holistic, multi-agency, multi-stakeholder strategy that will include everything else, but will be guided by unintrusive political leadership.
Thank you. That was Willem Els, consultant at the Transnational Threats and Organised Crime and the Justice and Violence Prevention Program at the Institute for Security Studies, with me, Steyn, on the NdB Sunday Show. Thank you, Willem.